With Samuel Matsikure, it'll need a whole month to explain myself. But what I can say is that Samuel is Zimbabwean, a resident of Zimbabwe. My journey has been quite interesting. I grew up knowing, I didn't know it was a different sexual orientation, but I knew I was different from other young boys growing up. Even those that I went to primary and high school with know that, and even those that I interacted with in higher education. I used to be a high school teacher. But when I came out around 1989, 90, somewhere there, I coming out to me was a lot of confusion because I realized I had different sexual orientation. A lot of people used to label me like, "Are you not a homosexual?" At the time, we didn't use words like gay, ngochan. I didn't even know they existed then. But friends and family used to quiz me about it. And I went and researched to understand what that meant. And the first thing that I did, even if you read one of my pieces I wrote at Columbia University as a fellow, was looking at my journey, which I think you might actually go and read and see what I was saying there. I took a dictionary, Collins dictionary, and went into one of those Blair toilets when I was in high school to read and find out where H was, and looked at homosexuality, which explained to me how I was feeling at the time, someone attracted to people of the same sex. The reason I went to the Blair toilet was that I was already conscious that people were labeling me, but I didn't understand what that meant. So my fear was that if I opened the dictionary and looked at H while every other friend of mine is around, they knew what I was looking at. So it already speaks to the stigma, and sometimes this was self-stigma and sometimes stigma that you experience from others. And I think my journey of confusion began then because I got then to understand what it was. And as a Christian, at the time, as a Christian then in school where, there's a lot of young people, you're guided by Christian values, education, you have guardians and so on. I did a lot of confessions around my sexuality, trying to take these feelings away. And when I left high school, I think the most difficult part of my life was actually not knowing who to ask. Even my dad or my mom, I could not say it. I think it's because we had not been given platforms to talk about sex or sexuality. I think it's a traditional thing in the African context. Parents don't discuss issues of sex and sexuality with their parents. I had not been guided by anybody to say, go and speak to your uncle or anybody when you are at a certain age and you're having certain feelings. That conversation never came up. But my parents being educated with good jobs, my mom was a nurse, my dad was a manager at the time. I had access to newspapers, magazines, and so on. So I started reading around some of the things that were coming out around homosexuality and so on. It was difficult to accept that this is what I could be. And it stressed me to a point that I started forgetting little things because of stress. I decided to commit suicide at one point. I reached out to my sister, sent a letter, I'm taking my life. And at that time, she was in a teacher's college. And when she got the letter, she quickly called home. We had a phone in the house. And say, can you check? Something is off, Sam. He has been writing these letters to me and so on. And luckily, a relative walked in. I had taken some tablets. And I think that was an awakening moment for me because I then asked myself, if I kill myself, who am I doing justice to? Or who would remain in pain? It was my parents. I'll probably be forgotten. And I started reading a lot. I decided to go to the local library. Those days we had community libraries. It's unfortunate that these days not many of them are functioning, but I think they used to be quite a big resource for young people. And I would go through the library and look at different research scientists. I looked at what is homosexuality, what causes homosexuality. I came across interesting Bible. There was an article that was done by Times then. I think it was around 1990 or 92 there, which looked at twins and homosexuality. And Times magazines used to come into Kingston. So I was able to procure one. And I read through that to understand, is it nature and nature and all that.
I also came across an interesting book which I ended up buying as well from Kingston's. I still have the book. It's written Aliens in the Household of God. It is a book where LGBTI persons were questioning their own homosexuality and attractions in relation to what the Bible say and their faith and so on. That was quite helpful for me. I also read a book that I still have. It's a novel which I've also shared with others along my journey. It's called The Lord is My Shepherd and He Knows I'm Gay. Because I was coming from a Christian background, so that really helped me to sort of deal with myself. But anyway, coming to today, I never thought I could be called an advocate or a human rights defender, or I'm working in an NGO or community-based organization. That was my plan. My plan was I did fashion designing, and then I went to teachers college. I taught a few years, but something kept telling me I need to educate society about who I am. Why? Because I kept meeting different people through Parade magazine, who were struggling like me. And because I had informed myself by the different sources of information I had read, I thought I could be a support system for others. I started meeting other young gay people in Harare, Mtare, and so on through pen pals. Some I started meeting physically, and we started talking about who we are and what our struggle was. And we realized that we had never talked to our parents. Our church system did not allow such conversations. All they would do is go and pray, go and do Hail Marys. I had known people that had said, I've been taken to a traditional healer. You use these concoctions to wash yourself. I've met people that said, I've been living in the mountains with the pastor praying and all that, trying to take away that. But this is where I'm at. So people used to come and visit my place where I was staying, and sometimes they'll just crash for me for a weekend. People come from places like Nyazura, Rusape, Gweru, Kwekwe, just to get away from small cities and go and be with people that they felt they might understand me. They'll come on a Friday, go back on a Sunday. Back then, transport was, it was reasonable in terms of need a 50 cents or 20 cents to get from A, B to C. Why did I start from there? I think reason being I wanted to let you know who I am and what my journey today as an advocate came out of. When I was then teaching, I said to myself, I needed to go and teach society. And I knew girls then started, people started self-organizing. It was around social events and nothing political. But in those spaces, people would talk about their own struggle, depression, anxieties, the loneliness, and so on and so on. I decided that I could be a support system. So when I left teaching later on, a few years down the line, I decided to join Girls. And when I joined Girls, I was an officer. And part of what then I had studied then was family therapy. So I thought I could provide psychosocial support and psychological support to people who were struggling with sexuality, understanding sexuality and religion, sexuality and culture, sexuality and issues of intimacy, loneliness, in a context that was not so open. What are the dangers of being in a same-sex relation? Does it even exist? Can it be taken away? Because a lot of people who would come to Girls, even up to today, still say, is there a cure? Is there something I can do to boost my manhood? I've had people that have gone through hormonal therapy to be injected more of testosterone so that they could be more masculine, less feminine. Or women who would say, I can't marry because my parents are forcing me into a relationship with this person. I've been raped and so on and so on. Which then brings the conversation to what are some of the challenges that people come up with, especially in our context like Zimbabwe. Because the people are not protected under the law, the current criminal codification, I think it's section 72 or 6, somewhere there, it is explicit around consenting and non-consenting sodomy. And with the amendments that were made around 2007, it also then further goes on to talk about if another man touches another man in a certain way, or if you are kissed, or if you express yourself in a way that
a normal person, I'm not sure what normal person means, or a sane person might construe as, an intimate act. It's sodomy. So what then that entails is gay people shrink more into hiding. But then it has repercussions. I'm sure all of us have had the myths that says to be gay you make money. Part of it is coming from two dimensions. The first one was a lot of gay people who came out and were in the public. When I say public, it was around what the newspaper was reporting. In the 90s, around 2000 and so on, there were white people that were said to be seducing street kids in town. There were white people that were accused of sodomy in the paper, or were considered to be perverts going around neighborhoods picking up young people. So white was seen as somebody with money, with power, to seduce a black person and pay them. So the assumption is a black person is making money out of the white person. Then we also had black people that also became mysteriously rich. And people, because of the rumors that that person has perhaps been attached to that person, that they are going around the city sleeping with other men, whether black or white, they are making money out of it. But for someone who has been doing this work for the last 25 years, a lot of those cases, you realize that people will make money out of blackmail and extortion. People would get into a relationship even with a white person, and they realize the white person have money. Blacks were considered to be from a poverty side. And, we still joke about it that there are two sides of Samora Street in this town. There's this other side of Samora and there's the other side of Samora where there's poverty, and the hidden suburbs, the other side of Samora. So what it meant was that a black person, even who was gay, was told, in the community, you make money. They would even come here and say, I'm gay, yes, but I heard you can make money. Because that's what society has cultured them and taught them to be. You're attracted to men, so you need to make money. Or you make money because you're attracted to men. So people came with that until you sit down and you're like, how do you want to make money? Do you want to be a sex worker? And then they then reorient themselves to say, no, my attraction has nothing to do with money. I'm just attracted. I can actually develop a relationship and so on. In developing those relationships, they will take advantage of the white man has a car. Why can't I just say to them, because the law has told me it's illegal, give me your car or I'll report you to the police. And in the 80s and 90s, we also learned the police was actually conniving with people who wanted to make money. They were also making money in the process. So if someone would actually bring a police officer to your home and say, this is the guy, and you part with your money, you part with your car. As I sit here, I know people who have parted with properties, houses, cars, farms, land, family inheritance for fear of what the repercussions of the law was. Why is it they had to give in? People also had to protect their names. I'm sorry, I'm known as a CEO, I'm known as a clerk, I'm an administrator, I'm a nurse, I run a shop, and so on and so on. So they parted with money to protect their name. They'll rather let the car go or the house go and even change the title deeds than lose that societal position that they hold. So blackmail and extortion is quite high and difficult, and it's in our society. Even as I sit here today, there have been cases in the past year or so because of COVID. People have no money, they are hungry. A lot of people are in the informal sector. There's now blackmail and extortion. If you don't pay me, I need to pay rent. If you don't pay me, I'll take you to the police. That still exists today. It comes because of the current legal status where the criminal codification is still in place. But you also need to understand a lot of people have been psyched by the homophobia that was pushed by then the late President Robert Mugabe, who would say we are not gays, it's an African, They are worse pigs than dogs. Every platform and chance you would get, whether it's at Heroes Acre, it's at a campaign rally and so on, this was peddled. It sits in people's psyche. It sits in people's mind. So every time someone says, I don't like gay people, so they would say, it's almost like they took the leaf out of him and say, they're not even referring to the law. So that in itself made a lot of people build anger towards minorities. That's why you find in society, people are violated, they are beaten up. If you are beaten, the difficult then is all these cases I'm talking about. If you go to the police, you become a victim. Remember, we have intersectionalities of identities. I could be someone's husband who's attracted to other men. I'm a pastor, or I'm a teacher. I'm a brother to somebody, and so on. If then I'm violated because someone of my perceived sexual orientation and I go to the report to the police, I'll become even a further victim. The police was also going to say, before they even think to express to you about the law. Then they'll look at the law and say, okay, what is sodomy? But because there might not be evidence of sodomy according to the law, you were likely to be harassed. Sometimes you get beaten in there and you be left to go. So access to justice becomes very limited when it comes to legal issues. Or sometimes you'll be like, for us to deal with you, you need to pay a bribe and we'll let go. That's why you find over the years you've also heard about the raids that were happening at girls. They were not simply happening to the staff here. Girls would organize social events in spaces where we feel we have a right to assemble, we have a right to associate. It's a safe space. But someone would say, why are gay people gathering? It's illegal. They'll come and beat you up through, all left, right, and center. You now need to seek medical intervention. The medical says you have to go and report. The same people who have beaten you. How do you even do that? It becomes a problem. In the same breath, you've been beaten, a few have been incarcerated or taken over to the police for the night. They would follow everyone on that list to their families and say, we caught your son at a gay party, at girls' party or that party. You are disowned, you have no home to go to, you cannot seek legal recourse. So these are still existing issues that we currently see today, where you find then people opt, why can't I go to South Africa? For refugee, it might be better. So you find an influx of people over the years. They've gone to UK, United States, South Africa, Botswana, because they felt they were better sanctuaries, where at least they can be protected, because the legal system has let them down. The police themselves have let them down, and so on. Girls, as a champion, of course, was able to go to the courts over the years, being questioned of their legality, their existence, and so on. And of course, the courts have been fair in that we have a right to exist, we have a right to be here as an institution and support the community that we are working with under the law. But the individual impact that has on individuals is totally different. Because even towards elections, a lot of LGBTI persons will experience violence in their community. Because the moment it's said we don't want gay people at a rally, they would start identifying. Now, the prejudice then is more against those that are more self-expressive. The ones who are more feminine, or the women who are more butch. The ones who are more feminine, sometimes some are trans, they are transgender. Or they could be gay, but more expressive. Or they could be a lesbian looking more, masculine. A lesbian, they also then, everything is zero down on sex. So that violence and the violations then happens, and then they cannot seek recourse. So we've had people that have actually left the country because of that. What we've also experienced, I think, when it comes to social issues, I think there has been, we went through, I always look at them with my experience of work as 3 phases. The first phase was the early 90s. Around the 80s and the early 90s, people were not so homophobic. We would walk into First Street and people were curious. What kind of boys are these? They will work on, stop on the sidelines and look. And will pout and scream and so on. I think part of that was what today we call activism. It was just creating, we are here, we are visible, we are just having a good time. Know us, be happy with us, it's okay, you know, we are not strangers. Gay people are not they are not aliens and so on. But the more the political rhetoric came into being, it affected the social fiber. People started questioning, so these people should not be existing in our community. They are not going against our morals. You know, they are pigs and dogs, and you know, this is un-Christian, it's un-African, and so on and so on. And the more it's peddled all the time within political spaces, the more Zimbabweans start getting angry. That was the second phase. So the phase where we are at now is we're at a space where people have really been conscientized, and to a point, they know LGBTI people or gay people or Ngocha and Estaban exist in society to date. As much as they might not like it, yes, they exist. It has created debates in various platforms, whether it's within the political parties, what's our position on LGBTI people. You've seen it being thrown between the ruling and the opposition. Within social media platforms, you know, I think Gochan and so on, you see people getting angry and angry, you know, on different platforms. It has allowed people to have conversations on different private media platforms. What is gay? Who are they? What is transgender? What is... And even in society today, you find one, people have started talking about it. During Mugabe's time, we used to call it a free publicity time, because the moment he mentioned it, gives attention to us, both negative and positive. The positive was more people were coming and saying, where are you? We want to find you, because I'm alone. The negative was you get the raids, you get the harassment of people in social spaces. In some bars at one point, I know a bar one time which banned gay people, but guess what? They banned it 3 months down the line. They wanted them back because no one was coming to that bar. The crowd just went off with the gay people as well. So we are now at a time where there's a lot of consciousness around LGBTI people socially. They want to talk about it. Now, one of the things that people always say is conversations are happening within urban spaces and not rural areas. That's not true. They've happened in rural areas. And you know what's interesting? The traditional leaders and communities would say, we don't have a problem with gay people because it's chikura titles that kune mwana wakwaninga akadai. Uyu anomborora uyu. Uyu anenge ane chitsina chechikadzi. Uyu ane donha rechikadzi. Munoziva here uyu akazoenda kutown kwakati akazodzoka ingonzi ari kuita zvinoita varungu mitambo yevarungu. They have all these different explanations and incidences and cases that they can. Amukuziva kuti vai havana kuzorova vegara vachirova varume vaive rake zimurume riyari. There are certain traits and things that they can relate to, but vaiti mutobvunza vari kumusoro ndo vasingazvidi vanouya munoti ati zvinotaurwa pamarali atidi gay people saka sume do tonovati hatizvitauri. Saka mukagadzirisa kumusoroko kana nesu kunongo zvinotinakira. So those conversations have happened, and they in many rural communities they know people who are like that, and they are part of the community, they are part of the society. Yes, some may be forced into heteronormative or hetero relationships, but they just know tababani ngambavaonere mpama mukasvika panodzura flow nendoo ende ndovano garden ravo vana vaonona vachitora vachigeza vega mainingi vaenda kunoti. They have all those different explanations. They may not use words like LGBTI, because then I think that's where the tension is to say, are these foreign names and foreign words? That's why you find I'm Shona, so I probably would want to use the Shona culture that I understand as a Ndau and as a part Ndau and also Manika. We tend to explain things than name them. Anenge mukadzi, ane simba rinenge rechirume. We don't have like many names of those people. That's why in our society we say anonzi Ngochan. It's one. But within Ngochan, they are all diverse people. A strong man, looking man, suit and everything, and they walk, you never know. And then there are those that might have a bit of female traits, and then there are those that are like, hey, anenge murume, anenge mukadzi. So in our society, we would explain by actions than naming. That's why you find that LGBTI is really then trying to define the diversity within Ngochan. But kuchishona hakuna izvo, tinotsanangura maitiro anoita munhu and how people express themselves. But all this, it also comes with a lot of stigma and discrimination. They are marginalized. Whether we're then talking about access to health services, because Zimbabwe has been devastated by HIV. West of Southern Africa, this is where the cases are still extremely high. You remember the days when Zimbabwe used to have like 15% of HIV prevalence. Now it's really going down maybe to about 11, but still it's extremely high. Because in countries where they've legalized same-sex relations, for instance, the percentage of HIV is almost like 0 point. It's extremely low because people then become more educated of the information, access to services. They don't feel the fear of actually interfacing with any service delivery that they want. Unlike here, if I get an annual STI, I'll probably not go to a facility if I don't know where that is. Or if they then go, they'll never disclose I have an infection. They want to treat us, until someone passes on. It's because of the current environment we're existing. It affects discrimination. You find even in schools. I many years ago, I'm sure you also, as somebody who reads papers, you've seen incidences where young adolescents in school are caught having a relationship or sex in a heteronormative school. Boys, they were expelled, or she gets pregnant, she can come back again, the new law that's there, but the boy continues school and so on and so on. If it's a same-sex relationship, they are both expelled from school, never to be heard, and so on. So even access to education, there are limitations. That's how children are marginalized. We did a study on last year on the atmosphere, we call it the campus climate. We were looking at what is the different policies that are within education, the higher education, tertiary education system, universities around Zimbabwe, especially the government ones. And you realize that they do not have policies that protect minorities. They are discriminated. People don't want to do my group work. Lesbian women are more integrated and accepted compared to gay men. Why? You also need to understand our society currently is seen not only through a heteronormative lens, but also very patriarchal. People who are in power in government and any institution are men. So men feel you are emasculating them when you have anal sex. They feel emasculated by being female. It's because it's also coming from a culture where women were positioned as secondary citizens in a country. And we still have that. That's why the gender disparity that continues to exist comes from that. And so on and so on. She should not be, my boss. So imagine then you're a man who is compared, because you want to be a female. You're emasculating us. So there's a lot of resistance. That's why you find even laws across the globe, they focus specifically on anal sex between men, and they do not look at anal sex between men and women. Because in reality, all of us are having anal sex, whether gay or straight. Now, in our country, the law, you also realize that it now says even anal sex between straight people and it's also a crime. But how many people have been arraigned if they've consented as straight couples to say you're having anal sex? None. So it's also coming from that heteronormative lens and very patriarchal lens where our society is guarded by men. Look at even all our traditional leaders, how many are female? So to protect culture and everything, it's also seen through the men's lens and so on and so on. But the world is also evolved. So, what has it taught me in terms of fighting human rights? One of the things that I've taught myself and the skill that I've used personally is that I do not expect everybody to like me. to love me. I might gain some, I might lose some. This is a conscious decision I made when I was coming out to myself first. Because I realized if I was to accept who I am after my suicidal ideation, thoughts, and attempt, I told myself, I have to love me first before anyone can love me. Whether it's relatives and so on. And when I started loving myself, I told myself that in my journey in my decision I'm going to make to be me, I'll lose people, I'll gain some. Some I'll educate, some they might refuse to be even educated and have a listening ear. So that's the same tactic I use in the work that I've been doing over the years. Because I remember the first few years when I was with girls, I joined girls as a staff member in 2003. I would go to workshops for HIV with 40 people. No one wants to have tea with you. They are afraid of you. No one wants to sit with you at lunchtime. Because you have said, I'm from girls and I'm gay and I'm here to attend to represent, in a space where we are talking about HIV, because we all know from history that gay men were the first people to be affected by HIV. So I would have tea on my own. It was the lonely place to be where there are 40 people. Imagine a workshop goes on for 3 days and that's all you are doing by yourself. But because I told myself it's going to be a hard journey, by the end of 3 days, I would have almost 3/4 of the people, if not half of the people, saying hello, good morning, and can we keep in touch? We want to know more. But you still get those that were quite adamant and very homophobic. They feel they are Christians. So sometimes when they will start workshops, they make sure there's a prayer, and the prayer has to infer somewhere around the devil sitting in the room. So it wasn't easy. But you know what it taught me? I'm here to speak on behalf of those people that will never speak. And I had seen those people that will never speak suffering out there by being rejected, lonely. Some even died of suicide. Suicides are almost lesser these days than compared to the time when I came out. There were a high prevalence of gay and bisexual men and trans people killing themselves because they didn't have a support system. So, but with time, you get a few allies in the space and so on and so on. You also look at the Zimbabwe strategic plan on HIV. It had a one line in there from around 2009, or 2007, 2009, that simply say, we will need to address men who have sex with men. That was the end of it. And no one wanted to address that line. Girls and the team at Girls said, we are going to address that line. That's why we were in the space. We're the only organization that decided consciously we are going to address that line. No one wanted to invest in that line. So our national programs only started 4 or 5 years back, if not less, responding to men who have sex with men nationally. But the HIV started among gay men. So the girls' programs in response to HIV started in the 90s when gay men we started providing psychosocial support, nutritional support. At that time, we used to have what we call the center here, which was run by Lynn Francis. She also came out and would support us with treats and meals and how to survive and so on. We lost a lot of gay people in Zimbabwe because of HIV. But some survived without a pill at the time. So that also gave me resilience to say I need to stand up for those who cannot speak. Now, so when I look back and people say, people who are now engaging in the conversation, they think, we haven't made much change in LGBTI and so on. For someone like me who's been in the movement, I've seen so much change. So much change that there are people who now understand these issues, who, yes, acknowledge it's a difficult environment, who believe in the cause, who also have children who are gay, bisexual, and so on, and they've struggled to accept them in a context like ours, coming from Christian families, traditional families, or just families, depending what your belief system is. So
The rights of LGBTI persons, while they are not in the constitution, I think some inroads are being made. If government can now program HIV-specific programs and provide safe spaces for any sex with men, which include gay, bisexual, and non-identifying gay men, it's a plus. It's programming around transgender persons, it's a plus. Because you also need to understand that when our constitution was being developed, there was a campaign to make sure every consultative site I would visit, there were hundreds of people say, what do you want in the constitution? And they'll say, we don't want gay people. They are not saying what they want. We don't want gay people. So it became a tension in the debate between parties to say, because at the time it was ZANU-PF and MDC, fighting for through the process of the constitution. It also became a tug of war to say, we want to see what is going to happen with this specific issue on LGBTI issues. So when you then go and say society don't want gay people, in my ears, for someone who is an advocate, a lot of people are being coached to say those things than actually to say, what is it that you want? Interestingly enough, when you visit or if you sit down with a person and say, what is it that you don't like about gay people? They never say, I don't like them because it's not part of our culture. The first thing they say is, it's like they don't have an opinion. They've never sat down with themselves and they have an opinion. But the moment you sit down and they have an opinion with them, people just say, but you know what, I've never thought of that. I might not be gay, I might not like gay people, but I think I understand what that is. But with the media and the exposure we're getting through DSTV and Asomizi, Caster Semenya's issue, Caitlyn Jenner and so on, I think I'm beginning to understand. But in Zimbabwe, it might not be. Rather, you keep it in private, but not public. That's why you find it even in the theories of economy. There's one called, I think it's materialistic, which also looks at people feel we can only embrace gay people if our economy is better. That's why you find in the Zimbabwean context, people always say, the economy is because to them, it's not an immediate issue. Where is that also coming from what I've also learned as someone fighting for human rights? There is what LGBTI people are asking for in Zimbabwe. And there is what politicians and the politics sell, which is different from what the constituents is asking. The community is simply asking for basic rights that are enshrined within our constitutions. We are not asking for any special rights. It's the applicability. Because when you look at the current constitution, it is a Bill of Rights. And in that Bill of Rights, it talks about rights to consciousness, right to privacy, right to health, right to associate, right to religion, non-discrimination, human dignity. These are in there. But we are not treated with dignity. Our privacy is invaded. It would have been beautiful if it was quite then explicit to also then say sexual orientation, but it didn't. Because of the political tensions that I spoke about during the process of constitutional making process that went in Zimbabwe twice. The first one with the Madukus and so on almost integrated something until, of course, it was voted out. In the second process of the constitution, the area of contention was around LGBTI rights. And that's why then there was fighting to say, do we push it explicitly? And the ruling party was saying no. That's why you find in our current constitution then it simply says same-sex marriage is prohibited. Why? Because everything then zeroed down they want to marry. How can I marry when I don't even enjoy the basic rights of a human being? So the LGBTI community, even if you look at some of the reports that we have done and produced, our violations report or the UPR process that we've also engaged in with the Universal Periodic Report at the UN, it's simply saying we're asking for simple basic rights, protection under the law. And if someone beats me up for being gay, am I able to report to the police without being victimized again at the police entry? They should be saying you have assaulted somebody, and assault under the law is a crime, regardless of why you assaulted them.
That's why you find even today when we deal with gender-based violence, it's you don't beat your wife because you feel she didn't cook a meal. That's still violence, and you can be arrested for it. There's no excuse for violence. So when it's perpetrated against an LGBTI person, there's no recourse. Because people would say, Nakroa, because in the Constitution I'll protect. No, in the Constitution I'm protected. You know how it says all Zimbabwean citizens, and I'm a citizen. My citizenship comes first before my sexuality. So every line you read, it says all citizens have a right to. So this is where the tension currently is in terms of human rights. There's a lot of awareness that has gone on over the years, but I think to some extent to address some of these issues is that it has had some limitations. One, we still have one TV station, we still have one radio station, and those are the stations that reach the wider network of citizens, even rural communities. And we've also then seen over the years the emergence of social media, TV stations, radio stations, and so on, which has allowed us to at least have some different platforms for us to engage, and we are doing that, but it's not enough. We need access to radio and TV stations, even by state, because state says everyone has a right to access information. You know? These are not special rights I'm not talking about, because sometimes when people then say we don't want gay people, the only thing they're right to is marriage. One. Then there's also another thing that I've also learned in my fight for human rights. There's over-sexualization of the community. When I say sexualization, everything is, we always, I'm not sure if it's printable, but people always say, they always see LGBTI persons through the eye of the penis. Let me put it. The act, the knowing that, or through sex. But an LGBTI person is more than sex and what they do in bed. I'm a citizen who want to get a job. I'm a citizen who want to develop this country and be given an opportunity to run a farm, to own a business, and know that I'll not lose it through blackmail and extortion. So right to property is important. I'm a citizen who want to contribute to taxpayers' money. When I'm doing good with my business, whether informal or formal, I should be protected. I have a right to employment. When I'm at work, as I experienced, we've had more labor cases over the years, and even up to date, where sometimes people are chased on, we were found on Christian values, we heard you are gay. Or they're in your newsroom. People start gossiping. All those big jobs and areas they are supposed to be sent to, they stop sending them. They start sending others, despite the fact that they may be competent. You government because you get on. So discrimination already starts. So the further marginalization also comes because all they see people is sex. But are people having sex every 5 seconds in this? No, you wake up hustling. You want to wake up in the morning and say, how do I pay my rent? How do I build my house? How do I own a car? How do I send my children to school? Which also brings me an interesting conversation with sex. Because people then say they want marriage, they want sex. Our population, if all of them become gay. So there's also an assumption that everyone turned gay because gay people are speaking out. But of course, science has told us that in any country, if I'm to want to use the modest number that people always use, 2% of our population are attracted to people of the same sex. In other sectors, they say 10%. So we're looking at about how many Zimbabweans? 16 million. 16 million of those, in addition to 3 million that are outside Zimbabwe, maybe 2% of those are attracted to people of the same sex. Some act on it, some don't. So we are not going to turn everybody to be gay and bisexual. That's not the issue. But these are issues then that come out. They forget that we are also waking up every morning and saying, I want to go and sell my shirts. I've got my flea market. I've got my vegetable store. I'm an administrator. I'm a secretary. I'm a teacher. I'm a CEO, I'm a director, I'm an MP, I'm a whatever, because LGBTI are found in all sectors of society. They forget that. Half the time you're not even thinking about rent, you're thinking about what is my bond salary going to be enough and so on and so on. You know, when you look also around the world, gay people are very creative. A lot of these designer clothes people come and flaunt here, they are made by gay people. The Dolce and Gabbanas, the Louis Vuitton that a lot of you guys wear and want to show off, and all these celebrities in our countries are wearing, they are made by gay people. They don't like gay people, but they like to wear their gay clothes, right? You don't like gay people, but I'm walking into your shop, supermarket, and buying food without disclosing my sexuality. I'm also getting my money. I'm also paying tax. You're also getting my money. But people say we don't want gay people. But gay people are all over the place. You look at the fashion industry. You look at the creative industry. It's dominated by gay people. Even go to Silicon Valley, where these computers and stuff, it's gay people. They're genius people. They are creative people. So they also want to enjoy and partake in the economy of the country. So when we are looking at the rights that we are looking at, it's the right to be able to participate in any process of this country. When the president is saying we are open for business, we want to be part of that economy and contribute, because worldwide, when you look at what they call pink economy, this is the economy that gay people contribute worldwide. It brings a lot of money to the GDP. In the work and the artistry that they do, in the creative world, in industry, in investment, a lot of this philanthropic money that is making our country survive is taxpayers' money of other countries, including LGBTI people. There are some philanthropists that are LGBTI. Let's look at Elton John, who has donated in HIV, housing, young people, women, and so on. He's gay, but so if we can take our mind away from the sex and focus on the citizen, the person, and give them the same privileges and opportunities, I'm sure we'll be somewhere. So as a human rights defender, I think in our journey, I've seen change where people want to have conversations. I've seen people where they are accommodating. Even in social places like clubs, I've also seen in churches where some are becoming more tolerant and inclusive, but some are not. Because there's also a tension where some are claiming we can exercise you and become straight. But I've seen people being exercised in some Sundays, and the next Monday they're here and they're saying, Sam, can you find me a boyfriend? I'm like, no, I don't think people do a boyfriend. That's not my business. Go and find them elsewhere. But because of family pressure they would have given and really want to change. Remember in my earlier session I said, people come here to say, I want to change. And they've done everything. And sometimes I encourage people to say, do what you feel is best for you at the time, but if it becomes too hard, then deal with it. But what then it does is it damages the person. That's why you find in many countries they are now banning what they call conversion therapy. We are trying to convert someone to be straight. It has been seen to be very toxic and detrimental to the mental state of the human, because it doesn't work. You can't change somebody. In Zimbabwe, yes, the approach is you don't electrocute us to change us. But a lot of people, you need to understand, as I said, exorcism in church, traditional healers, disownment, BP, the guy, let me. So that family pressure will leave you into a heteronormative space. Yeah. So this is currently where we are at in terms of human rights. I think while the laws have not been changed, but I think it's the applicability that we are talking about. But we've also seen in some cases, even in the courts, where there's been just against LGBTI. But we've also seen other cases where someone comes and says Sodom, and it's automatically you go to they don't even look for evidence. They simply say you've been accused of sodomy. It's also, our justice system can also be very homophobic. The police can be homophobic. But I've also seen police officers that actually go by the book. If there is no case, they will release you, they will not harass you, they will not beat you up. I've also seen in the justice system that the magistrates, the judges really pursue through the case and cases are dismissed. So we have a mixed bag where those that are really respecting the constitution and the law and universality of rights are really following through, in terms of the justice system. That's why you find the cases I said earlier about girls and so on and winning those cases. It shows sometimes the justice system can be partial, but there are also other cases where you also question. So those are the things that we have seen. But then again, is it true that some LGBTI persons choose to remain in the closet? Yes, they definitely remain in the closet. I think we did a study last year, it was 2019, 2019, end of 2019, coming into 2020, where we were looking at the population-sized estimate of gay and bisexual men in Harare and Bulawayo. The sample that we were able to reach with that study over 3 months was 24,000, I think 24,000 something. I can almost put it at 25,000 because I think it was 24,830 something. Can't remember the actual number. But these are people that we have not been touched by girls, let's say by programming. But over the years, we have had more than 20,000 walking through that gate. Some have left the country, some stayed in. But these numbers I'm speaking about, because it was a randomized study by referral, by seeds that we had been planted in. It also shows that we do have a bigger population of LGBTQI persons in Zimbabwe, especially men and sex men. We have not had studies of other smaller groups. Hopefully in the future they will be done. But like I said, the 2% issue then come in. Why do they then remain in the closet? Fear of being disowned. Remember Zimbabwe as citizens. Even I love my communal life. I love to be part of a communal life. My relatives are important to me as a support system. Sense of belonging is important to me, whether it's a Christian group or traditional group. That's still there as part of our culture. The ubuntu that people talk about. I want to be part of that. So to be part of that, there are some things I may forgo. I might decide not to be like me, who made the choice to say, I want to come out, I want to fight for others. I'm going to live my life and my truth. Others can do that. Some fear losing their opportunity to go to school because we've had students. We are running a scholarship for students, LGBTI students, to support them in university. Those that are struggling to pay school fees or who may have issues, perhaps with family, who say, discover you're gay, we're no longer paying for your academic, school. It happens a lot. So we support them to make sure they feel school, because once they are able to take care of themselves and they have an education, they have a career, they're able to live a fulfilling life. But we also try and reintegrate them back into the family and work on their relationships. Yeah. So these are things that then makes one not want to come out. Then a lot of other people that I know went into marriage thinking the katamkazi and the girlfriend or a wife, these feelings will go away. So once they're in marriages, they realize they still have the same attraction. Some may be bisexual, attracted to both male and women. Some they're actually gay. But because of the socialization and fear of the mother, like I said, she'll die of a heart attack or my mom will be disowned and so on, they simply decided, let me marry. In the marriage, they just realized they're attracted to men. And they then tend to have relationships with men outside the marriage. That's why I find, even when I was talking about HIV, gay people are not an island that have their own HIV and then the rest of the Zimbabweans have their own HIV. There's that intersectionality. There's no separation because the world is intertwined either through marriage, relationships, the hiding, the closeted, as you spoke about. So yes, there are people who are in the closet, which then increases issues I spoke about earlier, blackmail and extortion. Some hold positions in church. Some hold positions in traditional structures. Some hold positions in parties. Some hold positions in companies. And for a society that does not embrace yet LGBTI people, they will rather remain closeted and remain underground and not be open about who they are, their sexuality. In other countries, people cannot display, you hate celebrities, I'm bisexual, and it's not an issue. That is still impossible here. Even when you then compare to other African countries like South Africa with the good laws, a lot of people still don't come out because of the same fears. And the worst off in South Africa, there is violence and murder. It's a few who actually have been bold enough to live their lives because they can now marry, they can live together, the law can protect them and so forth and so forth and so forth, which is a good thing. But you find people fear being disowned by family and not be part of that communal life anymore, and they live in isolation. It's not a nice place when you're in isolation. So these are some of the things that we have seen. But we continue to see suicidal ideation going up again. Part of it, I think COVID and the lockdowns has also made people remain at home all the time. Now you're being asked, why are you not married? You're not bringing food.
it becomes just too much into people, and they feel like I'm taking my life. Just before you came, no, you were actually sitting here. I received a message from somebody who was saying to me, another fellow colleague invaded their privacy in their phone, and they are now going around telling other colleagues that they are gay. And he said to me, I am depressed, Shokuti, I might take my life. This is something I got today at 10:80. So I've referred them to a counselor. So this person is an adult, he's 40-something, he's working. Let's take again the issue that came up, which everyone is very aware of. The teacher at St. John's. He was well known, did his work diligently, students love him, they passed, he had no case of being accused of abuse. But the moment people discover of his sexuality, it became a national cry. There's also a lot of hypocrisy in that. Some people who are probably crying the loudest are also part of the LGBTQI community in hidden closets that you have referred to. Because there's a lot of also internalized homophobia. You tend to hate yourself because you are seeing yourself in others that have had the guts to come out. And what I also find interesting is that young people of today are more accepting of gay people than the older ones, in the older generation. When I say young people, I have heard people's nieces and my own nieces and others saying, no, I know James is gay. He's my friend. 9, 12 years old, 16 years old. Because they also watch Anasomizi, they watch TV, they know cartoons and characters and so on and so on. They now know what it means, and it's not an issue. The people who still have an issue is the old guard. So sometimes when we say, have we progressed in human rights, slowly people are becoming more conscious and so on. But it's difficult sometimes to change the old guard. So it's also about generational issues, where we also see young people of tomorrow. It will be a different world altogether. So the work that we are doing is not going to waste. I don't believe it is. I feel that we may not enjoy the same privileges and rights that the future generation will enjoy in Zimbabwe, especially for LGBTI people. We are just doing the groundwork. Why am I encouraged? Because when I look at other movements elsewhere, it took more than 50 years for LGBTI rights to even be accepted and tolerated in America. And Zimbabwe is 30-something years old after independence. And worse off here in Africa, when you look at the culture and so on, it's still quite part of society. But also, so that's encouraging when you see young people changing their mindsets and be able to say, I've got a gay friend and so on. At one time, I was quite chuffed by a relative of mine who says to me, brother, do you have any lesbian friends? And I had not come out to him. What do you mean? So I've got some lesbian friends who want to meet other lesbians. So when I thought I was hiding it, because of their consciousness, they already knew, they didn't even need me to spell it out, So those kind of things are sort of changing in our society. But we have also seen over the years an influx of people migrating to other countries, as I said earlier. They are happier there. But they also want to come home, just like people who left because of economic meltdown in Zimbabwe, politics and so on. Everyone wants to come back to Zimbabwe and build it. So if we are thinking about, I was listening to the president the other day on his speech. He always speak about we are not leaving anyone behind. He's not saying we are going to leave some people behind. Only gay people will be left behind. He never says that. We don't want to leave anyone behind. So anyone who is left, it's like you're heading ship, eh? And if you see one goes off, you bring it back. So that's what leadership takes. So inclusion is about making sure you're moving with everybody. But trust me, we are not all the same in Zimbabwe. So one of the tenets that I see and I hope would be something that Zimbabweans can look at
how do we deal with the pain of the past, the pain of our history in the 30 years around violence and so on, because the levels of intolerance in this country are extremely high, not only against LGBTI people, but against a different opinion, a different political position, a different position on an issue. People get so angry. We are an angry nation right now. People are just angry. You know, sometimes you just like, I follow Twitter most times anyway. I like social media engagements that are happening, and I just read. If, for instance, the head of state posts, we are building a bridge, or let me just say there's a road, no one says, oh, that's a nice road, you can do more. That's a poor road, we don't want it. People are just angry. So you can also imagine throwing that in the mix, the LGBTI discourse. That was for the last 30 years old is a well-oiled machine of homophobia. You cannot unravel that and leave that within 30 days or within the last 2 years of a new dispensation. Let me put it like that. They need to heal from that political rhetoric of, say, gay people are un-African and so on. Because if people really want to know what is African, the white men, or I'm not sure if it's the white men or whatever, but there are people who always say, if you want to make people ignorant, hide it in books. Go to our, I'm not even sending you very far away. Go to our Zimbabwean archives up the road after State House and dig our history. Our history will tell you there were gay people, maybe not labeled as gay. There were men who were courting anal sex with each other in 18 Chagote and so on. There's a lot of history written by Mike Epret digging into the Zimbabwean archives. It's our history, right? Go to Uganda. Uganda has rich history of the kings and queens who used to have groups of men he will have sex with and so on as part of the African culture. So sometimes when people say African culture, they assume it's one. There are certain things that happen in West Africa that you might not like it here and think they are not African in practice, but they are. There are things that happen in East Africa that happens there that the same thing in Southern Africa. So we don't have a one Africa where we say this practice are an African. So when people say this is an African, where are they basing their research on? It's because people are not going deeper. Yes, they might say, well, it was written by white people and so on. That's why I refer you back to the village. And I'm not subject. One of committee might learn was say. Whatever explanation they give, they have it. So some of these things we need to look at it that way. But because we are not doing that, you find that people then have an influx of people who are going to countries that are more gay friendly, like South Africa and so on. And we are happy to say that in Africa, of late we've seen countries changing. Botswana recently removed those laws. Mozambique. We have Namibia is also proposing to remove soon. I think Liberia or one of those two also, and some other African countries don't even have those laws because they were not colonies of the British with the sodomy laws. They are just silent. But of course, we have to deal with the treatment sometimes when someone then comes out as transgender and so on and so on. Then you were also asking me with the removal of Robert Mugabe and from the president in November 2017, has anything changed with regards to LGBTI rights? Well, I think in terms of the law, nothing much has really changed. But I think what I can say is that a lot of the issues or things that we thought would address then have not really been dealt with strategically. I think people consciously have sort of shifted because of the current atmosphere we're experiencing. What is it that I've seen? I think the president, the head of state did state when he was in Davos that those who want to campaign for LGBTI rights be able to do so. In the meantime, he will respect what's in the Constitution, and he will not be the one advocating for that.
We have seen little efforts where girls reached out to all political parties during the last elections. And interestingly enough, we got 3 responses from all political parties. Some did not even respond to our mail. And our questions were simply based on what is their position on good governance, what is their position on justice, what is their position on human rights, what is their position on access to health, and what is their position on LGBT rights. What we also managed to do at the time, the previous elections, was that we managed to read as many, what do you call them? Manifestos of different parties. So I actually read the ZANU-PF one, the MDC ones, and all the other parties that I could get higher ends of to really understand where they were going. A lot of them really emphasized a lot around promotion of human rights, rule of law, development. But of course, they didn't really specifically mention on LGBTI issues. But I thought, if you say human rights, you are being more democratic. If you are talking about development, you are including everybody. We are open for business mantra, it's for everybody, regardless of sexuality and so on and so on. But what was interesting at the time is that the ruling party did invite us to have a talk on what our concerns were, which we raised around violence, arrests, harassment, non-protection of the law, and so on. And of course, they were also coming from an understanding position that this is a very conservative society. We have a history where this issue was also highlighted, and they have a history of the constitution and people, what the citizens say. But I think for me, as an activist, it left me an open window to say we have room to advocate, we have room to continue to educate society, we have room to continue to engage. Rome was not built in a day. So slowly, as I said, the generations will change. I might not enjoy those rights now, but I think it was a good start. The other parties simply went silent, so I wouldn't know what their position is. So elections are coming soon. I think it's also an opportunity to re-engage again. Because one of the things that LGBTI people are interested in, those in and externally, is to build Zimbabwe. To come and invest in businesses of their choice and make sure that their right to property is respected and enjoy the freedoms that everyone is involved in, is enjoyed. Because currently when then you have a business and someone comes and say, because it's viable, they are likely to lose it. So rule of law and so on then comes into play. What is it that I've also seen, which has happened since Mugabe left? Less political rhetoric on LGBTI persons. It's not mentioned much. People are concentrating on development, of course, COVID, building our institutions, whether we are looking at health, improving our debt registration institutions, accountability issues, transparency, dealing with corruption, and so on. This is what people are really concentrated about. Gay people are part of that conversation because we are citizens, as I said earlier. So that, I think, has also lessened the tension within the public spaces. We are getting less human rights violations, especially physical assault and even just verbal. It's become less. What we are seeing more is sometimes disownment, because disownment, one can come out or can be found out within a family setting. As I said, the current COVID, and they are saying, we are no longer paying fees, and so on. And sometimes they may opt to, we have to use our safety and security strategy to house them and give them a space to live and find ways for them to sustain themselves. Or some might opt to leave the country. But right now with COVID, some are leaving, as long as you meet the required regulations of a country and so on. Some still live. But this is where we are sitting at. What is it that we have also seen? We have seen an increase, especially in the health sector, engagement and serious programming in response to HIV interventions nationwide. We've seen partners really taking into account to create an enabling environment where these groups are reached with services, around the country, not just here in Harare, but it's a national program, which also is a good response, because the more people talk about an interface and changing policy to access health services, the more then the visibility and environment changes.
We've also seen more and better engagement with parliamentarians through our sensitization trainings, sensitization trainings with Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. We did the Gender Commission as well. The institutions themselves, bringing them to a space and to discuss these issues and how we can work together as a collective. This would not have happened during Mugabe's time, mind you, because people were just afraid of anything and everything during Mugabe's time. People were like, we are not so sure if we talk about this, what will happen, and so on. We are seeing more response from government institutions to engage on these issues and hear what the concerns are. And some are warming up to appreciate that, these are citizens who may not have understood it, we may not like it, but they are citizens, they have issues. We are also seeing, efforts in really making people navigate different spaces without too much harassment, also from the police. There isn't a lot of that policing of LGBTQI persons within social spaces like it used to be. Someone would have reported and the police will come. Now, why is that? Because people always think where gay people are meeting, they are having sex. We also meet to discuss business. We also meet to discuss entrepreneurship. We also meet to discuss around wellness and well-being. We also meet to discuss about investments. We also meet to discuss about our families. Because one of the things and tenets of the community is that we also want families. It might not be the conventional family that you think about. But people also want children. People think, gay people, then if they are 2 men, how are they going to have children? The world has moved on. There are ways of having children in this country. You can have surrogacy. You can, a lot of us are looking after our siblings' children who have died. Our siblings have died of HIV. We have people that are dating who are also bringing in their own children into the family. And these kids are thriving because people also when they know you're gay and the child will become gay also and so on. I became gay, but I was living with a heterosexual family. Not all of my siblings or my relatives are gay, but I am. So it doesn't always follow that just because you are living and raised in a family where there's a heterosexual person and gay person, everyone becomes gay and so on. It's not a choice. It's not something that I just wake up with this morning and like, now I want to sleep with men, or I want to sleep with women, or I'm trans and I'm this or that. You go through a lot of rejection, mental health, you really have to think about it. That's why people remain in the closet. So we've seen some shift in terms of also the public perception and accept. People are now talking about it. One interesting thing is when the opposition leader was asked a couple of weeks back about this issue, there was so much debate on social media and Twitter. Did they respond well? LGBTQI say he didn't say it right. Others were saying no, he did it wrong. Because this is a very politicized issue, which was supposed to be a social issue. It wasn't supposed to be a political issue. It was supposed to be a social issue. How do we deal with any social issue? For instance, how did we deal with long back when people would give twins and they'd be killed for giving birth to twins? It was an omen giving birth to twins. It was an omen giving birth to an albino. But people have shifted because of knowledge and mind. That's social issue, social transformation, changing perceptions and lives of people and making sure that, people said, being gay is not Ubuntu. It is Ubuntu because Ubuntu, what it used to do from my own African perspective and practice, from what I've read and what I've heard, even from my own village, if a child is different and the family notice, punishment pachirana. Vanatete can go and check what's going on. Some might come back, the explanation, Musana waka ona usimba. Anogona ngasina bari muzvaitest kwakuputi murumai bani. Paingono papasi kuita nhumbu. Kungonzi nofunga mbeu yakaina usimba. We already explained. Uyanenge ane donha rechirume. Tete varamba vachingoti vakarorwa varamba navarumorana, varume vanorowa, varume vanodhaura, varume, all this. But vainita say, kana ari mukomana wakona arinyanya watamba nawakomana kunzi ngachibude mugota arori. That's Ubuntu. I know of relatives who have said, uyanda urorerwa mukadzi. umbochecheredzwa kasikana kachinzani kasingagoni unyinga uko kombota afambidzana uyu because he is being given that he had to force himself to say musikana unomufambidzana naye zvepapo ndikana zvakuramba sometimes vaipinzira iyo dzekuti kupinzira uku yes they can explain kuti yanga iri barren but we didn't have science to test his sperm kuti zveshuwa ibarren here. We had a way of explaining mbeu yake maijudges. It's only now when science can say you have lost sperm count. So we have a way of ubuntu of dealing with people that were different. Kana vari tete vaigona kunzi ngavavakirwe musha wavo vagare nevana vavo vakasosiwa navarumana nemurume wavo nokuti vanga usingagari. Tete vanogona kutozvitsvakira vagopfuurira danga ravo vega, vagopfuurira imba yavo vega, vagogadzira danga, vagorima, vagodi, vagotumira vana vachikoro vagoenda. Vakasambozonyepera futi vakaonekwa nemurume. Vakomana vaionekwa vaita zvebonde vari 2. Vanasabhuku vaiedza voti musvipisa musha wedu woripiswa. That's ubuntu. What has only changed now, we can now talk about it openly. Kudhara zvainzi izvi ndezvemumusha hazvitaurwi izvi. Your families have secrets that they've never disclosed and you don't even know them. Some you may know them because wakadzwa kuti iwe mwana uyu haasiri ukanyitwa baba mukuru wakasopindira mbuya wako namaiko. Zvautoona zvimwe hazvitombofa zvauno people take it to the grave. So there's a lot of secrets in our culture, especially here in Zimbabwe, that then did not open up to address these issues. Now because of HIV, because of human rights and so on, we are now talking about that's what has changed, not that gay people have changed. It's only we are now talking about. And the more we talk about it, the more we see people coming out. Because sometimes people think, when I go to fashion and claim what I'm gay and so on. Gay people are one. So no. Remember, at that time, the population was 1 million of Africans. Now we are 13 million. So the more you give birth, the more you also give birth to gay people. And they're likely to come out. And now they're coming out because they can identify with the issues under discussion, either through my organizations or social media and so on. Go to all our social media platforms. There's so many gay people there, but they use fake identities not to be seen because of the environment. But the engagement is happening. So when you look at the incident that happened with Chamisa, it created a whole conversation. And people are saying, it's time Zimbabwe take its head out of the sand. People exist. Let's all move together and heal as a country. Because, trust me, if you are a parent and say to your child, uvenge mwana watete uyu, nokuti baba vavo vakatutorera mombe dzedu vakasadzora. If there are 5 of you, if you plant that ruvengo in your heart, unotodzidza kuvenga even mwana wachasangana nawo kumabasa kwachafamba ngoti because you have planted it. So people got that plant of being homophobic with time and over and over and over. Sometimes they are angry and they're not even angry what they are talking about. Until sometimes they discovered, I've met people here that used to be very homophobic in my work. Very homophobic. And guess what? Son, daughter is gay. Cousin is gay. Ndazofunga semi zvakatsanangura zvezvi. Ndofunga sisi wangu anenge ari gay. Sisi wangu, my sister akazota come out like, oh my brother akazota come out. I didn't even know. But ane mukadzi akatogara kakati zvaita taikura chona. You open people's eyes. So sometimes there's a lot of ignorance then that comes with we don't want gay people. Until you have had an interface with that. So we've seen a shift in terms of the attitude people are talking about. But we still also continue to see what I would call social media trolleys who are very homophobic. And from my analysis, sometimes I find those people not to be in Zimbabwe. Do you know those people who have so much data on their phones and their laptops? They are not here. Because data is very expensive in Zimbabwe. Kutotumira munhu picture pa WhatsApp unonzwa munhu unotumira picture andina data. So when you expect people who went to diaspora, for instance, are going to be understanding, some are even more homophobic. Why? Because they are still thinking of Zimbabwe they left 10, 20 years ago and not realized Zimbabwe has also moved. Not only in gay issues, but also in social issues. Now we see celebrities who wear skimpy clothes, who bleach, who take nude pictures. We are seeing porn all over, left, right, and center. That's the Zimbabwe of today. Now we all would wish we can go back to Mbuyane and last time, but the world will never be the same. It is not. Sometimes you also hear people saying, well, if we allow gay people now because of this country the world will come to an end. Why Zimbabwe? Europe has legalized gay marriage. Their lives are thriving. They are building their economies. Gay people are happy. They have families. They have cars. Everybody, straight people have cars. They are moving. They have skyscrapers. They have spaghetti roads to add onto it. So this development agenda we have in Zimbabwe, the development agenda we have in Africa, the 2063 agenda, it's not discriminatory when you look at those documents. They talk about equality, inclusiveness, all citizens togetherness, and all that involved. And that includes people that we do not understand, which is LGBTI people. So there's that shift. But in my conclusion of this point is also to say, yes, while there's slow shift now and less harassment intentions, I think we have not really addressed the issue. So I'm quite happy to see what will happen in the next few years, to say, would there be real change in inclusion? Especially on the critical issues that we all want as Zimbabwean, respecting our constitution to start with. People always say, but gay people were banned by the constitution. No, it did not. It simply banned same-sex marriage. It's quite clear. But it says, as a citizen who is in Zimbabwe, you can enjoy all these other rights, but not marriage. Because say, remember, I come back to my oath. I'm sure if you have your preamble, read the first line. I'll show you the first line. That is, all our diversity, I'll say. Now, then people say, but we are a Christian nation. The Christian values I know is, do not judge lest you be judged. There's no better sin than the other. The only person who can judge us is God. That's why you find even today, there's a lot of judgment that is being done by, in quotes, our prophets today. We prophet, preacher, that's not the gospel that I knew. The gospel that I knew was about building a communal life. Even in my churches, they where they are located, it's rural areas. A community. No papa, if you a child who can share fees, one community where that's the communal life we knew. Today's one is so divisive. And if we are to really harness Zimbabwe where we want to be as a collective, to take a hit out of the equation, let's heal tolerance. You might not like me, but you can tolerate me. You might accept me. You might bear with me. I'll respect your space, you respect my space. I'm not trying to turn you into being gay or bisexual or whatever it is that you feel you need to be. So this is where Zimbabwe really needs to go. But so there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. The constitution might not change today, trust me. But we can change the environment by making sure that we are failing to the T, rule of law, rights that are in our constitutions. All those rights, when you go through them, it says all women, young people, people with disability. I'm a man. I have women. Because you're a lesbian, it doesn't take away you're still a woman. You could be gay and disabled. You could be gay and a man. You could be gay and have a religion. And it says everyone has a right to freedom of religion. It doesn't say what type of religion. It says religion. Whatever I practice, it's my choice. That constitution gives me that privilege. So those are things that we can look at. Then you also spoke about a survey that was done where it actually says 50% of gay men in Zimbabwe have been physically assaulted and 64 disowned. These are things that we continue to see, but there are a lot of interventions that we are doing. We also try and work very closely with police in all different locations where violations would occur. We would also reach out to those police officers. Some police officers even notify me when sometimes, just people just feeling homophobic in a pub or things like that. So we also make sure where there's the need for legal recourse or justice, that person gets representation. It is important to mention, Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights work closely with girls, and we also have other independent lawyers that are able to represent where violations have happened. What we do not protect is if you're an LGBTI person and you violate other people's rights, whether it's stealing, forced sodomy, non-consenting, you are being lazy at work and incompetence, all those things, we do not represent you because you would have violated an agreement or someone else's rights. We are here to protect the rights based on the current laws
that are there in there. So there's a lot of that. In terms of, disownment, I think, like I said, we have mechanisms where we make sure the person is not on the street. I've never had currently a person who's gay who's right on the street if they've been left out. Our cases of our most successful program, which Dow started and has had for 30 years, is counseling. We use what we call systemic therapy, where we identify the different support mechanisms of a person. Where is this person coming from? Relatives, friends, church, and so on and so on. And we work with that. What we also realize is that a lot of people sometimes have that one person in the family who's able to house them than being on the street. So would rather pay for their bus for while we continue to rebuild the relationship with whoever they've chased them, a guardian or a parent. So our cases in terms of response is actually 90% reintegration. That's why we don't have a safe house for LGBTI persons in this country. People are able to reintegrate after some time. But reintegration might happen while they are renting elsewhere. The 10% is what we then get people living in the country. Because sometimes some situations are very difficult for them to stay, especially after disownment. It's not always people run out of violence or politics and so on. Just violence in the home can just tell you I'm off. Then you also were speaking about the contract that is between South Africa, Botswana, and Mozambique, and the current protection laws. I think we are seeing a whole shift in Africa. It's an exciting time as well. We are seeing African countries taking out these sort of laws because we inherited them. Zimbabwe, if you look at it, we had laws and a constitution we inherited, and we amended it so many times that people just simply say, why can't we just come up with a new constitution? And we came up with a constitution. But our laws are still inherited from colonial masters. That's why you find sometimes when people are comparing POSA and I think the old law, that also still curtail people from demonstrating and so on. It's coming from colonial legacy. Yeah, so we still have these sort of laws that we simply inherited. We still have certain laws, even whether they are bylaws of council or of that are also still currently existing from Smith's side, where blacks were not allowed to enjoy their freedoms. It reminds me of a conversation I listened to online last week, where ZANU-PF youths were interviewed with MDC youths. I think it was on HSTV. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I think so. So they were talking about how are young people involved in this. And one of the things that I found quite interesting was a comment that even in city council, if you want to buy a toilet paper, you still have to go through the protocol for it to be bought by whoever is up in the echelon of the structure to buy toilet paper. It's because those laws were designed that way at the time to control the black masses who were the laborers. So the country's efforts then in trying to realign the laws to the constitution is a slow process, but it's being done. That's where we should be. And address some of these old draconian laws that are no longer relevant in a democratic society. So those are efforts that I think we should really be looking at, because Botswana, as I indicated, decriminalized. Now even people are trying to make an effort for trans people to change their gender markers to suit their now current embodied gender, including their ID, to make sure it matches your outward presentation. If you were transitioning from male to female, you need to make sure that even then when you're stopped by a roadblock, they can't say, but who is she when you are he on your ID, that sort of thing. So those are little things that we are saying. Mozambique, they get access to state TV, they have discussions and debates about LGBTI people. The community is quite visible, because people always say, but I'm not sure the gay people in Zimbabwe, we only see a few. The environment does not allow that. But in Mozambique, they are able to do so. And they work in different fields of their economy and of their country freely. Where there are issues, they are reported and addressed and being protected by institutions. And this is something that I think the current LGBTI community in Zimbabwe is calling for. How can we be protected by the different institutions? Because in different institutions, I don't think they were directed to say, but when a gay person pitches up,
don't deal with them. It simply said all citizens can report to the police. So the police have to see, has there been a law that has been broken down? So even when you're talking about issues of sodomy, you have to be caught in the act, not being arrested on being perceived as. Because it's like you see a man working the or a sex worker, and then you arrest them. That's not what the law says. She has to be caught in an act, or there has to be a complaint. But sometimes you find LGBTI persons are simply harassed and arbitrary arrest for being perceived. And then when you report to the police that they, have been harassed because someone is perceived me to be, sometimes they even become the violator as well. So those are things that we've seen changes happening in places like Mozambique and Botswana and so forth. And that's an exciting thing to see those kind of changes in Africa. I hope they'll also rub into Zimbabwe as the environment changes, as the leadership continue to call for people to be inclusive without leaving anyone behind, and also really saying they want to abide by the Constitution. And the Constitution is quite clear. It says all citizens in their diversity. So those are the things that I feel we may need to look at, and this is where we are. For me, who has been doing this work for a long time, there was a time, yes, when I was feeling tired, especially during the raids. You are always on high and anxious, and but I feel where I'm at, and when I look back, I think there's a lot that we have done as a community, because the resilience and the sustainability of the movement, it's not me. It's not just Gal staff. It's not the other LGBT organizations that I imagine. It's the existence of the LGBTI community and the public who have warmed up and understand that they might have a brother, they might have a sister, they have gay people in their church, in their sports club, in their workplaces, in their schools, in their playgrounds. There are people who are like that, and I don't think it's a lost cause that we have, but it's still a lot of work that needs to be done, because the Mugabe era really created a whole different atmosphere, not only for LGBTI but for citizens. It's very toxic, it's very intolerant, it's very judgmental. It's a cancer of hate that we really need to address moving forward as a country, if we are to get into the development that we need. Yeah.
I think you've done justice.
Yeah, I hope so.